The Arctic is rich in hydrocarbon and mineral resources. The region also holds two essential trade passages that connect East Asia, North America, and Europe. In other words, there is tremendous potential in the Arctic, and climate change is forcing nations to reevaluate their national interests. In a previous report, we went over the territorial claims, legal proceedings, and the fact that every Arctic nation has made claims on the Northern Hemisphere. The ongoing disputes are legally complicated, but no other country is as well prepared to dominate the Arctic as Russia. My name is Shirvan and this is Caspian Report. If you want to support our channel to create more original content, visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/CaspianReport. Back in 2007, a Russian scientific expedition planted a titanium flag on the seabed of the North Pole. Shortly afterward, some Russian politicians suggested the idea to rename the Arctic Ocean as the Russian Ocean. Following these symbolic messages, Russia spent the next few years assessing the long-term prospects of the exploration of Arctic resources. Furthermore, Moscow commenced naval patrols in the region and started reactivating former Soviet naval bases in the Arctic. Then, in 2014, the Russian Foreign Ministry renewed its legal claim that the Lomonosov, Mendeleev, and Alpha ridges, which run across most of the Arctic, are connected to the Russian continental shelf and therefore part of its territory. The dilemma with these claims is that all three ridges extend all the way to the North Pole, especially the Lomonosov ridge, meaning by claiming these central ridges as part of its continental shelf, Moscow is in fact claiming all of the North Pole as its own exclusive economic zone. Canada and Denmark reject Russia's claim of the ridges. In fact, Canadian and Danish international lawyers are considering to make continental shelf claims on the Arctic ridges as well. The disputes are still far from being resolved, and all of the involved parties have deployed scientific expeditions to prove their claims. Despite the complicated legal landscape, Russia is determined to reinstate its claim. For instance, in the same year, Putin demonstrated Russia's military capabilities during the Vostok exercises. The operation involved over 155,000 personnel and thousands of jets, tanks, and ships. These were the largest military exercises in the Arctic region's history. The training scenario was such that an armed conflict had erupted over the South Kuril Islands with Japan, and the Russian Arctic Army was tasked with defending the Arctic territories against the American Army. This military scenario also shows to whom the Russian Arctic militarization is really directed against. Besides the military exercises, Putin has spent extensively on the militarization of his Arctic claims. Satellite images show the ongoing construction of at least 6 permanent military bases in Russia's Arctic region. The most northern located outposts, such as the ones in Alexandra, Kotelny, and Wrangel Islands, are meant to ensure Moscow's Arctic territorial claims. The other dozen outposts on the Russian mainland are meant to reaffirm Russia's authority over the Northern Sea route. At the present, the outposts in Alexandra, Kotelny, and Wrangel Islands are only meant for small groups of special forces. For instance, the base in Alexandra has facilities such as fuel depots, heating installations, and runways, but the outpost is incapable of hosting significant combat forces. The same principle applies to the other northern outposts. However, the limited capabilities of these bases is only temporary. The Kremlin's ultimate goal is to field a formidable force to protect its territorial claims by 2020. As of November 2016, Russia appears to be well on track to achieve that deadline. In the coming years, Russia will deploy sophisticated S-400 air defense systems to its northern Arctic outposts. There are also plans to construct new radar and ground guidance systems for Wrangel Island, Cape Schmidt, and Franz Josef Land. In addition to these changes, Putin also intends to create new military groups in Murmansk. This force of 6,000 soldiers will include 2 mechanized infantry brigades. What's more is that roughly half of the Russian Northern Fleet, which represents about 60% of the entire Russian Navy, will be stationed near Novaya Zemlya. This archipelago is one of the most strategic positions in the Arctic. It allows for Russia to monitor and control the Northeast Passage. The other half of the Northern Fleet will remain stationed in the Kola Peninsula near Murmansk. However, the Murmansk fleet is constrained by its limited operating space. For instance, the distance between the Kola coastline and the Arctic ice is about 300 kilometers. This gives the Northern Fleet a space of 300 kilometers of open water before it can navigate itself to the Atlantic Ocean. For a fleet consisting of dozens of warships and submarines, that is not much. During the Cold War, this gap was one of the primary vulnerabilities of the Soviet Navy. NATO had accurately codenamed it as the kill zone, because this is where the American and Soviet Navy would have collided. As the Arctic ice gradually diminishes, the Novaya Zemlya and Murmansk fleet operation space will expand. Essentially, the Northern Fleet will no longer be afflicted by the geographical barriers. Closely associated with the Navy is Russia's vast fleet of icebreakers. In total, Moscow has 42 icebreakers and 8 more under construction, whereas the United States only has 6 and 1 under construction. This is a tremendous gap. It's also noteworthy to mention that on the average, a heavy-class icebreaker costs about $1 billion and about 10 years to construct. There are only a few companies that manufacture these special-purpose vessels, and even fewer are able to construct nuclear-powered icebreakers. Meaning, even if Washington decided to order a fleet of icebreakers in 2016, given the construction timeframe, it's already too late. The truth is, the United States lacks an Arctic strategy. At best, Washington will be playing catch-up with Moscow in mid-century. And the enormous gap in icebreakers shows just how determined Putin is to dominate the Arctic and reel in its vast riches. However, Russia's path to dominate the Arctic will still be met with resistance from other NATO member states, particularly by Norway, Denmark, and Canada. These countries have invested extensively in their Arctic defense capabilities. Still, however, they lack the means to compete with Russia. Therefore, under the leadership of Oslo, the three have turned to NATO to secure their Arctic interests. For instance, following the enormous Russian exercises in 2014, a year later, Norway too held its largest military drills in Finnmark on the Norwegian-Russian border. The Norwegians are particularly interesting because of all the NATO members, Oslo is the most anxious about Russia's militarization of the Arctic. Currently, Russia has 2 territorial disputes with Norway. One, Oslo claims an exclusive economic zone over the Gakkel Ridge in the Arctic Ocean and says that it's part of the continental shelf of the Svalbard Islands. Moscow disputes this. In fact, that's the second dispute. Russia questions Norway's sovereignty over the islands. Under the Svalbard Treaty, signatories are given equal rights to engage in commercial activities. Nonetheless, as of 2012, Russia has stimulated the migration of ethnic Russians to assemble around the coal mining industry in the islands. Even though the mines are not profitable, the growing Russian population in the Svalbard Islands gives Moscow the option to justify an intervention. Tensions between the two states are high. Russian and Norwegian fighter jets frequently intercept one another over the Arctic skies. Neither side is interested in an armed confrontation, but as long as Russia continues to expand its military presence in the Arctic, Norway will advocate for greater NATO presence in the Northern Hemisphere. Ultimately, every Arctic nation has a security task force, but Russia is the only one with an Arctic army. In the coming decades, militarizing the Arctic will remain a key imperative for Putin. No other country is as well prepared to dominate the Arctic as the Russians. Everyone is lagging behind. The United States doesn't even have an Arctic strategy. In fact, American lawmakers are still debating whether climate change is real or a hoax. Meanwhile, Putin is taking active steps to dominate the Arctic by mid-century, and if he can maintain control over the political elite in Moscow, Russia's dominance over the Arctic is a safe bet. Essentially, all the territorial disputes stem from the desire to claim natural resources and safeguard commercial shipping, and the fear of losing it. Until recently, none of it was technically possible, so most nations just shrug it off. However, as the ice continues to recede and the quest for more energy endures, geopolitical tensions are bound to rise. There are two scenarios that could unfold over the next decade. First, Russia's militarization of the Arctic could entirely backfire and promote a new arms race in the Northern Hemisphere. This would affect the transatlantic traffic, as well as the Russian-Scandinavian relations and the long-term relations between Russia and East Asia. The second scenario, a more reassuring one, all the members of the Arctic Council are mature countries who mostly abide by international rules. The Arctic Council and the UN have laws regulating the territorial disputes, environmental pollution, the rights of peoples, and more, meaning a diplomatic solution is perhaps the most likely outcome. This was a Caspian Report by me, Shirvan. I want to thank the following people on Patreon for their amazing contributions, and if you want to support our channel, please visit the fundraising page on patreon.com/CaspianReport. For now, take care and sağ ol.